So our vow of the week has been desires are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. And how many of you have been successful in checking that off the list? Oh, awesome. Nice. Well, so a couple things I wanted to point out about this particular vow. It corresponds to the second noble truth, the cause of suffering, which is desire or attachment. And if you think about the Gata of Atonement, it corresponds to the line, because of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance. So this vow of desires are inexhaustible, I vow to put an end to them, is about looking deeply into the roots of the cause of suffering and how our attachments can lead to actions that we put in the world that perpetuate our own suffering and the suffering of others. Thought I'd read a little bit from Shobo Genzo, which is Master Dogen's masterwork, and the chapter Showaku Makusa, which translates into not doing wrongs. Makusa, the word ma, is actually, if you look at that kanji, I don't know if you can see it on top there. Ma is also the word for demon, which is sort of interesting. This kanji behind me says cut the demon. It's another expression for not committing wrongs. So what does Master Dogen have to say about not committing wrongs? For people of just this reality, at the moment of just this reality, even if they live at a place and come and go at a place where they could commit wrongs, even if they face circumstances in which they could commit wrongs, and even if they seem to mix with friends who do commit wrongs, wrongs can never be committed at all. So what Dogen's saying there is, regardless of the circumstances we find ourselves in, regardless of our karma and our habits, regardless of what other people are doing and what's acceptable socially, wrongs can never be committed at all. What he's saying there is it's always an option to not manifest behavior that is born of greed, anger, and ignorance, which is, I've always kind of found that really liberating. No matter what, there's always the option, if we're awake, to not put suffering in the world. And even if the action is refraining from doing something we could do, that is not committing wrongs. As Brad Warner likes to say, sometimes the vow about saving sentient beings is, I vow to save sentient beings from myself. So I'm going to continue a little bit here. The power of not committing is realized, so wrongs cannot voice themselves as wrongs. I love that line. Wrongs cannot voice themselves as wrongs. So let's just say, I don't know, you're having a tough morning, you're tired and cranky, and it would be really easy for you to snap at someone you love. So that potential is there. Well, if you don't give that potential voice, if you don't actually say or do anything, then that wrong doesn't exist in the world. Even then, we have a choice. So you don't actually need to transform yourself into a person who internally doesn't feel irritated at things. But if you are aware of the potential, you have a choice about whether or not you want to manifest that. I always found that really liberating. So he continues, So wrongs cannot voice themselves as wrongs, and wrongs lack an established set of tools, which is also kind of an interesting way of thinking about that. That there's many, many ways to bring suffering into the world, and there's no established set of tools that are there. We tend to be creative in how we manifest wrongs. And so if we are aware of the potential and make the choice not to, there's no like established set of tools that we have to then use to manifest that wrong. There is the Buddhist truth of taking up at that moment and letting go at that moment. There is the Buddhist truth of taking up at that moment and letting go at that moment. So this gives us a clue about maybe a practice that points towards what the second of the great vows is telling us, which is desires are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. Well, how do you put an end to a desire? Like, I'm irritated and I want to snap at a loved one. Well, if you don't manifest that and you just let that desire be there and just move along with your day, it sort of like dies a natural death. So really, if we just don't get in the way and we let things kind of play out, then there's the Buddhist truth of taking up at one moment and letting go at one moment. At this moment, the truth is known that wrong does not violate a person, and the truth is clarified that a person does not destroy wrong. So what this line is getting at is even if you do snap at that loved one or manifest behavior that's born of greed, anger, and ignorance, it doesn't violate you. It doesn't make you then a person who is greedy or an angry person or an ignorant person or a bad person. It just means at that moment you've manifested wrong. And in the next moment, you have a choice. This is one of the things about Buddhist ethics that I've always really appreciated is that no matter what you do in this moment doesn't preclude you from making a different choice in the next one. And even if you've been a jerk all day, every moment's an opportunity to turn things around. So the truth is the truth is known that wrong does not violate a person, and the truth is clarified that a person does not destroy wrong. So it works the other way too. If you've been really kind and compassionate all day long, does not ever eliminate the possibility that in that next moment you're not going to be a jerk. So the second great vow, I think, is a wonderful reminder, if we say it to ourselves every day and chant it together, that there's always the potential, no matter what, in any situation, for us to put behavior in the world that can perpetuate suffering. And there's also always potential, no matter what, to refrain from putting behavior in the world that can perpetuate suffering. And the way that we can, put an end to desire or the three poisons is to practice noticing them when they arise and, letting them kind of die a natural death. We don't need to put an end to anything. Just like the seasons change, we don't have to do anything to make them change. If we get better and better at being intimate with and observing the manifestation of greed, anger, and ignorance in us, then we have more and more choice about how we want to respond when they come up. So besides Robin, Carmen, I know you guys have put an end to desire. The rest of us, maybe what we can do is just sort of practice noticing when, those three poisons, greed, anger, and ignorance, start to show up. And then in those moments, just see if we can just breathe through them a bit, delay responding just a little bit, just to see what happens. And if all you can do in that moment is to just not be a jerk, that is accomplishing that second vow. Sometimes that's the best we can do. But like imagine what the world would be like if every person, even just like 10% of the time, was able to do this, to sort of notice the potential to be a jerk and just decided not to. Like how much better the world would be. So even if you can only do this, 1 in 10 times, 1 in 100 times, that makes a difference. So thank you for sitting with me today, and go off and practice ending all those desires. Let's end with the 4 vows.